Okay, it's already recording. Hi, welcome to the Entrepreneur Book Club book discussion. I started the Entrepreneur Book Club. This is actually the first time that we have a discussion, and this has been an idea that was in the works for a while now, and I guess thanks to COVID, it just sprung into action. It's something that I wanted to bring to life, and I thought that this was the perfect moment because we're going through a pandemic, which is the time to like reorganize ourselves, restructure ourselves, rebrand ourselves, and maybe some of these tips that come with like reading an entrepreneur book will help. But prior to COVID, I was already working with several business coaches, and I decided to bring them on so that they can discuss these books with us. So every 3 weeks, we're going to get a new book and a new coach. But at the moment, I'd like to start with my favorite coach, Ernesto Gamboa. I met Ernesto at Pioneers 21, formerly known as The Hub. And I'm going to let Ernesto introduce himself for a little bit. So tell us who you are, Ernesto.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for that introduction. If I'm your favorite business coach, I hate to see how you treat your non-favorite business coaches. But anyway, so yes, hello, everybody. My name is Ernesto Gamboa. I've been working with startups in some fashion since 2001, all the way from angel investors to a business consultant, city economic development. So I love working with entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur myself. I have my own consulting in addition to working for Pioneers 21 now, which is a local business incubator here in town. For anybody who may not know what an incubator is, we help new and growing scaling businesses get started. We're not officially part of the city economic development, but we are funded. More than half, approximately 60% of our funding comes from the city. And that's for the purpose of helping entrepreneurs scale, grow, and be successful. So entrepreneurship is a passion of mine, and I've been working with Michelle for some time now. So thank you very much for inviting me to do this first session.
Of course. Thank you for agreeing to come by. And there's a cute, neat fact about his hat that I'm going to show you all. And it has to do with the author of our first book. So tell us first why you chose, or why the E-Myth was one of the first choices that you gave me. Because he let me pick between like 3 books, but I wanted to go back to the E-Myth.
Yes, absolutely. The E-Myth, or now the latest version, E-Myth Revisited, is one of my top 3 books that I always recommend to clients or just people that ask me about good entrepreneurship books. The reason I particularly like this one is because, in my view, the biggest challenge that most entrepreneurs have is replacing themselves, and we'll get into what exactly that means and how the book discusses that, and relying on systems, working on your business rather than in the business. That seems to be the biggest challenge for entrepreneurs, particularly to scale. And so this book deals the most directly with that. So there's lots of great books out there, but this is definitely one of my top 3.
Awesome. And then going back and reading the book, because I had read it before, but this was different, and I guess I'm in a different position now, where when I read the book the first time, I was still in a technician phase. And so I dropped the book about halfway, because if you have read the book, or if you understand what the book is, the technician phase, like you're busy because you're doing everything for the business. And of course, I came to that position where I was overwhelmed, I was tired, and I had to focus my resources on actually working on the business, in the business.
Right.
Working in the business. And that made me, now that I've read it, I understand that I have still taken like a step further, but in going another step further, I'm still like in the adolescent stage, and now we're going to the entrepreneur stage, right? And that's where most of us want to be. And that's why I thought it was a good book for everybody to read, so that you can identify the level where you're at and what makes you go to the next level, because then that's where you want to be. Like, it's okay to start out as a technician, but ultimately you do want to run a business like this to be able to retire, because of course, like, the energy I had 10 years ago isn't the energy that I have today, and it's definitely not the energy that I'm going to have 20 years from now to still be running a business being a technician.
Correct.
Okay, great. So wait, I'm going to show you all a picture. So the first author is Michael We've heard the two pronunciations, Gerber and Gerber. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to share my screen with you all. And if you notice, his hat matches Michael's hat. It's such an amazing fedora. I love it. And it was given to him by Laura, his girlfriend. So it's even more special. Who would have thought he had a girlfriend?
Wow. I don't
We're
know if that was
kidding. And Laura's here joining us.
I
So
don't know if
thank
that
you.
was a backhanded compliment
Laura
to me
is a-
or Laura or both of us maybe. I'm not sure.
Laura's amazing. That is nothing ever to say bad about Laura. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the discussion, like the chapters, the books, and everything as it starts.
Okay, so I actually like to kind of give the bottom line up front. That's an old journalistic technique where you lead. So what is the myth? What is the actual myth of the book? And the myth is that most entrepreneurs are not actually entrepreneurs, or rather, they don't start off as entrepreneurs. As Michelle was just talking about, the book talks about there's really three roles that are in any entrepreneurial venture. You have the entrepreneur, the true entrepreneur, the manager, and then you have the technician. And the technician is the one who knows how to do something. Person knows how to bake pies amazingly. The person knows how to make soaps, things like that. And so this person, the technician, decides, hey, I can do this so well, I should be in business for myself. I'm going to fire my boss and I'm going to become my boss. But in reality, they're still the technician. They're thinking about their role as a technician. They're trying to make soaps, they're trying to make pies, they're trying to be a graphic artist, whatever the example might be. And as we'll see in the discussion, that is very limiting to the growth of the business. And so with time, there's these other roles, manager and the true entrepreneur, which is the visionary, the one that works on the business, not in the business, like the other two roles, that also have to happen. And now initially, of course, especially when there's so many businesses start, one person, right, a sole proprietorship. And so he or she has to fulfill all the roles. So it is common that you're the technician and the manager and the entrepreneur. So really what we're talking about is where the entrepreneur, quote unquote, is actually spending the most of her time as a technician, as a manager, or as an entrepreneur. And most of the time they start as a technician.
Okay. Yes. So that's where it goes to identify, and I'm gonna go real quick to chapter 2 because that's what he's saying about chapter 1. On chapter 2, it tells you the technician lives in the present and it's all about doing the job. The manager plans and organizes, clings to the status quo and craves order. And then when you turn into an entrepreneur, you're a visionary. You're living in the future and you're moving from idea to idea. So the goal is like how he said. And I did have a really hard time letting go of Hippie Grow because I think when I started the spa, because I have gone now from several businesses, but when I started the spa never felt like my baby, although I did love the spa and I still do love the spa because it provides really well. Hippie Girl was the first business that arose like because I was in love with that actual business where I became the technician because that is something that I loved. So when Ernesto was telling me like to let go of that position, I couldn't. I was like, I can't teach somebody how to make beautiful soaps. Like, what's wrong with you? That's like nobody can know. Nobody's gonna know how to do that. But actually, I didn't have the right person or the right steps in order for that person to thrive at their position, and it took a lot. Like what? Like a year and a half?
At least. At least.
It might be 2 years pretty soon. It might be 2 years in May. So it might be 2 years in May. It took me 2 years to go from technician to manager for Hippie Girl, and I still feel that I'm still not at the position where, but I'm more ready than I was to let go of the technician position. Like I'm more willing to let go of the manager position than I was of the technician because, like we said, nobody can do this. Like I know for here, like I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I know Gabby like has a business too where she's offering like the services, and I was trying to tell her too, like you need to have like different sources of income because then we're focusing on on the technician position, and I actually told her, I was, I'll read the book because I think you'll understand like exactly where you're at. Because when I see her, I actually see myself when I first started going with you, which is not a bad position to be in. Like, she's wonderful at her business, she's a great in her position and in her practice and what she does. But you're right, like the energy that she has now, I don't see her having that energy to continue forward for like, let's say 10 or 15 years, because at that time we want to chill. I don't know, like when I'm already 43, so when I'm in 10 years, I'll be 53 and I want to chill out a little bit more. Okay.
And if I could just emphasize again, there's nothing wrong with starting as the technician.
No,
in fact,
great.
most, right, most, I don't know what the percentage is. I'm sure someone's done research, but most entrepreneurs start that way. Most do. And I kind of skipped this in my intro. Over the years, I've worked with at least 60 entrepreneurs. I'm actually, it's probably higher. I just haven't, but it's true most of the time.
Okay. It's true most of the time. And you're right, like I don't feel that we can start unless we're the technician, because we are building this company. Like, we're the ones who started. Like, I think everybody, like, that's the reason why some people start out of their garages. Like, that's where you start. Like, it's not where you stay, and it's not where it's going to be like in a few years. But I think that the sooner that we understand from going from the technician to the manager, like, I think that's the hardest jump of all. The That's the one that I don't want to let go.
Because that's the first.
You can't hold my baby the same way.
Right, that's the first let go. The second step is, again, it's a second step. It's not the first one, so it's not as hard.
Okay, cool. So let's go over what do you have on your notes? What's next?
So my notes are the big picture, right? And so what I always like to tell people as they're going through and reading books is look for the big picture, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I like that. I think it's kind of funny. There really isn't anything ugly in a book like this, but I consider things that are ugly maybe things that I don't fully agree with, or things that other authors or books that I really like and respect also don't agree with fully, but it provides that perspective. So that's how I always approach a book. What's the good? What's the bad? And what's the ugly, right? So that's part of it.
Okay, great. So here it's like telling you like it goes like the next chapter 3 goes into like the infancy, like what the technician phase is. Number 4 goes into the adolescent stage, like when you're actually finally getting some help. And then chapter 5 goes on to like helping you go beyond the comfort zone. And then go ahead. I think that's as far as like you've got.
Right. So with the comfort zone, we talked about it a little bit. The person who's a technician says nobody else can do this as well as I can do it. But the assertion is if you find the right systems, not people, the right systems, and put the right systems in place as a manager and as the entrepreneur, then you can find the right people to replace that and put the systems in place.
Right.
So that comfort zone is where that has to be coming from. Saying, I've got the system now. It's not the person, it's the system. And in fact, I like the analogy that they use. They talk about, obviously, operations manuals, right? Writing everything down in an OP or an SOP, standard operation.
Oh my gosh, he beat me to do this. Like, it was hard.
Not enough, because she hasn't fully done it, but she's getting better.
But now I'm in a different phase, of course, like where I actually like understand, like somehow I just was like, let me learn the hard way.
And a lot of us have to learn the hard way. I mean, not just in entrepreneurship, right, but in life. I mean, that's just.
But the bad part to that is that you don't always thrive. Like, I feel like I had to work harder because I didn't listen. Like, I had to work harder to continue the business, because as a technician and a manager, I was working double time and burning myself out. And I think it was like until I actually looked at myself and saw how tired I looked, like that I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing to myself? Like, I don't want to look like this.
Right. The lack of a system, right? When you get to the point where you realize I have to hire somebody else because there's only so many hours in a day. It doesn't matter if I work 20 hours a day. I still have to sleep at least a few hours. So when you get to the point where you have to hire someone, but if you don't have the right system in place, then now as the manager of the person you've hired, it's very difficult. And to be honest, the person or persons that you've hired have probably been set up for failure because they don't have a script to follow. They don't have that exact recipe to follow. Now, does that mean that it's going to be perfect and exact? No, but we want to get as close to that consistency as possible.
Okay.
That's the idea of the systems.
Okay. Go ahead and continue. Where else do you have next?
Well, I think if you want to continue through the chapters, yeah.
Okay. So then it talks about great businesses don't become great once they mature. So if you think like this is just gonna naturally happen over time, it doesn't. Like there's still like that possibility. It talks like where if you don't actually go from one phase like to the other, the business is gonna run itself to the ground. Um, and it goes into so number 8, like chapter 8 is a very significant chapter because here's where it talks into like how do you do this, like how do you apply like the systems in place, right? And so it uses McDonald's as like an example, and it calls McDonald's the the most successful small business ever, like, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that. I love that analogy. I love that example. And so the system, and they're very blunt about this. He never says that in the book that McDonald's makes the best hamburger. We all know that McDonald's does not make the best hamburger.
Right.
But what they've done is they've built the best system that can be scaled that's consistent, right? Consistent is everything. So you can be in New York City and Times Square and have a hamburger, a quarter pounder or whatever, Big Mac, and you can be in Venice Beach in LA and El Paso and everywhere in between. And those burgers are going to be, what it's going to be like. What the fries are going to be like. They're not going to have more salt, less salt. It's their amount of salt. You may like it or not, but it's going to be consistent. Mm-hmm. And so your experience of saying, I want to go here to McDonald's, you already know. If you choose to go to McDonald's, you know what you're getting.
Right.
So that's the key of the system.
Right, and then there's like a lot of companies that ended up copying this system and became very successful. And so if you think of other franchises like Subway, Chick-fil-A, Burger King, they adopted the same systems, and it's like they're offering another service, but it's pretty much the same. Can you think of other companies that have applied, like franchises that have applied the same systems or?
Well, the franchise model is fantastic, and I actually have studied it quite a bit. So the franchise model typically is thought of in food, right? That's when we can name a bunch of restaurants. But think about things like rent-a-cars, right? Avis and Hertz are franchises. Surf Pro, like where you have the water removal.
Kendra Scott.
Right.
Oh, actually, I think Kendra Scott's another franchise.
No, it's not a franchise?
No.
Exterminators. I mean, just about anything you can think of now is almost franchisable. And so the franchise model has been growing, and that's the key. That's the reason, because it's replicatable. Once you know how to build and run and staff and hire a McDonald's, you can put 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 20,000. And that's, for a lot of people, that's the idea. Now you can replicate. You have all these McDonald's, but you're not there making the burger. You can own
right.
5 McDonald's and be on the beach somewhere.
And, yeah, let them run themselves, be at home, doing nothing. Okay, so then it goes into chapter 9, which is what we kind of talked about in the intro, where it says working on your business, not in it. And how can you make your people independent from you?
Yes, and that's really, even though the E-Myth is obviously the title, and we talked a little bit about people that talk about the book or Michael Gerber's work, that's usually the biggest takeaway that you hear. Work on your business, not in the business. I've even heard people quote that, and they don't even know where it comes from.
Okay.
So that's how popular that saying has become, and that's great. That's wonderful. The thing is, the challenge, and I've seen it also close to personal. A lot of people don't understand what exactly does that mean. A lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs think, well, of course I'm working on my business. I'm cleaning the floors. I'm making the soap. I'm doing the whatever, right? I'm painting the walls. But that's not work. The distinction is the work.
I feel personally attacked right now, guys.
Well, she invited me. No, the working on the business, not in the business, is to remove yourself from the day-to-day stuff and think about the big picture strategic. Where do I want my business to be a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? In fact, that's really what he talks about. The real key is think about where you want your business to be in 5 years. What systems do you have to put in place? And we can talk, if time allows, the real specifics on how to do these systems in place. But where do I want my business to be in 5 years? And so the time that you're spending thinking about that, visualizing it, planning it, sometimes it's just ruminating on it. Just literally, I'm not gonna write anything down. I'm just gonna sit here for an hour or 30 minutes and just think about where do I want my business really to be in 5 years. That's working on your business, not in your business.
Okay. Understood. um. Okay, so we're going back now into chapter 10, the business development process, where the author tells us like that we should be able to read everything about our business through numbers. Once again, Ernesto preaches this like in his coaching sessions, like numbers. What are the numbers? What are the numbers for this? What are the numbers for that? Everything in the business is the number. Like inventory is a number. How every money came in, like those are numbers. Like break them down. Like how did everything come to be? And so with that, like that's basically what it's telling us on this chapter. And your business should be predictable, and to be predictable your employees should have no discretion on their job.
Okay, so on the numbers, first of all, yes, absolutely, numbers, right, or accounting. That's a shout out to my girlfriend. The accounting is the language of a business, right? If you don't know what your numbers are, you don't really know what your business is doing. Now, every business is different, but the number idea is pretty similar. So for instance, how many customers did you have in a day? How many sales did you make in an hour, right? A spa may be count number of customers in a day, whereas a restaurant may count number of customers in an hour. Whereas another business may count but in whatever time frame it is, how many customers did you have? How many contacts did you have? How much closing? What was the profitability? Even to the point of saying, if I sell this kind of product or service, my profitability is higher. If I sell this kind, my profitability is lower. What can I do to focus on the higher profitability and not the lower profitability? Even though all profit's good, but again, there's a limited time. So how do I drive that profitability up? How many did I see in a month? Do I do better on a Tuesday? Should I shut down on Saturday or should I be open? And that's all driven by numbers. But to come back to the system, if you don't have the system to capture those numbers, to record those numbers, to put it in your, an Excel spreadsheet, QuickBooks, whatever you're doing, then you can't do that analysis. And you don't have the system, and your employees, certainly your team members, certainly cannot do it because they don't have the system that allows them to do it.
Okay, and some people, I did read like on the reviews where a lot of people don't like this point, but it says, so where it says like that your employees should have no discretion on their job, it tells you like, because if it explains that if it's because if you depend on people, you get chaos and you can't replicate it 100 times. And if that's the case, ultimately, like you don't own a business. So it's following like a replica of something that I had already heard before. And this was prior to me being an entrepreneur, I worked at a law office, and the lawyer always hired paralegals with zero experience. And actually, like if you had experience, you were unqualified for the job. Like they didn't want you there at all. Like you didn't even stand a chance. Like they would just throw your resume away, because he wanted to teach you everything that he was going to do exactly how he wanted you to do it. And he felt that if you had already had experience with like another lawyer, and that you were going to do it how the other lawyer taught you, because you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And so that was his basis on it. And he never went back on that, and he invested like on his paralegals. And I think now the paralegals that they've had when I was working there back in 2008 are still employed there. So they've done a really good job of like finding these people. But prior to that, they did have like a little bit of a hard time finding like those paralegals that were gonna stay.
So this is an interesting part. This is one of those that I consider, again, funny, the ugly, because I don't agree with that fully. The fact of them not having any discretion. I think that, and I can give you authors and other folks and personal experience. I think there's a happy medium, or maybe not even a happy medium, but an 80-20 rule where you can give, especially when it comes to customer service, you can give certain discretion, but within guidelines, right? So you don't say you can offer any kind of discount you want. You say for a valued customer, and a valued customer is defined as, I don't know, somebody that comes in more than 5 times a month, somebody that spent more than $500, whatever. This is a valued customer, and if that valued customer asks for a discount, you can give them up to a 10% discount. So there's a guideline. You're not saying do whatever you want, but there's a guideline. Or another one of my other favorite authors is Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Work Week. He says, you know what? He puts in systems. Part of his system is an FAQ, frequently asked questions. He tells his customer service people, if we have a disgruntled customer and their complaint is going to cost me less than, I don't know, $200 at some dollar limit, just do it. Okay. Don't even bother me with it. If it's refund them the money, send them a new one, whatever. If it's not going to cost the company more than $200, just take care of it. So okay. I think there can be some discretion within guidelines.
Of course. Okay. So now it goes back into how do you build such a replicable business with the business development program consisting of the following steps? It tells you you need a primary aim, a strategic objective, an organizational strategy, a management strategy, a people strategy, a marketing strategy, systems strategy. And then it goes on to ask you like, what's your life goal? Because business is part of it, but your primary goal should be bigger than the business itself. So once you know your primary aim, it allows you to bring your business to life and life into your business.
Right. And so again, this theme keeps coming up. All those different kinds of systems that Michelle just described, that is talked about in this chapter, the system has to be developed. And the book is just saying these are all the different areas where you have to have your customer retention program, your hiring program, your HR program, your strategic goals, things like that. Everything has to be down and captured in an SOP, in the policies of the company, and how you're going to get there for the goals, right? And of course, before you do that, you have to know what is the end goal. Okay. What's the end from the beginning? This is what I want it to look like. So these are the things that I need to have in place so that I'm getting there. For all of this big, huge thing, this huge term called business development. There's all these different areas that have to be developed in the business.
Okay. And so then after that, it goes to talk about like, out of all these strategies, like it explains how to do your strategic objective, your organizational strategy, your management strategy, your people strategy, your marketing strategy, and your systems strategy.
Right, and so the objective could be something like, we want to have as many clients as possible. So that then informs, how do I do all these strategies? We just want to get as many clients as possible. Or I want to get more high-paying clients. And the example I always like to use is cars, right? Ford or Chevy, they have one strategy where they just want to sell as many cars as possible. Mm-hmm. Mercedes, Land Rover, all the way up to Porsche, Lamborghini, they have a different strategy. They don't want to sell as many cars, but they want to sell fewer cars, but at a much higher profit margin. So their strategy, all of it, their marketing strategy, their people strategy, their location, everything, every system is informed by, are we trying to reach all the masses at a low price? Are we trying to be Walmart? Are we trying to be Lamborghini? Are we trying to be Neiman Marcus? Are we, who are we trying to be? So that's why you have to know what's the end goal for your business. And then you work backwards from there, developing your strategies, all your systems to get you there.
Okay. So after it explains like the systems, it goes back into like telling us it pretty much ends, but what I have next is a list of like the cons of what I thought were the cons of the book.
Yes, please. Okay. Go ahead, and then I'll chime in.
So I just thought that it was like a little bit repetitive, like it went a little long. So some of the chapters that I was like, did I already read this? Did I go back? And then I would go back and it does like repeat it. And it's probably because we need to hear it. But at some point, like I feel that I did get like tired, like I would have to take a break and then read it and then pick it up, and then I did that a lot where I wasn't like I wasn't hooked to the book where if I'm hooked to a book, like I can read it in one night. Like I will stay up and just retain like and read, and I won't stop reading it. And I didn't feel that way with the emails. Like I felt like that repetition was a little bit hard.
Okay, so one thing there, and again, by the way, when I'm working with entrepreneurs, clients, I do tell them, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to be a lifelong learner. And obviously, in today's world, one of the easiest ways, or maybe always, is to always be reading. So yes, always reading books, entrepreneur books, business books, and even fiction books are useful. So the difference is, if you're reading a nonfiction book, an entrepreneurship book, or something like that, even something like on a skill like marketing, you shouldn't expect it to be riveting, where I'm not going to put it down like a really good novel. So it should be interesting, of course, but even if you can do 15 minutes, that's what I tell. Believe it or not, a lot of my entrepreneurs say, I don't have time to read. I said, well, you need to make at least 15 minutes a day to read. And by the way, the average American, and I'm not saying that anybody here present is average, but the average American can read, if he or she reads 15 minutes a day, can read one book every 2 weeks. So that's right, 52 weeks in a year. Let's throw out 2 for vacation. You're reading 25 books in a year. That's a huge wealth of knowledge. So, but just to come back to Michelle's point, yes, it can be repetitive. Some of the best books are, because repetition is one of those core tenets of learning, right? They teach you, tell people what you're going to tell them what you tell them, and then tell them what you told them, right? So it can be a little repetitious. I agree with that, but I think it's useful.
It is, and I did feel that once I started finishing it, I was like, because I felt that the points he made came across like, okay, I get it, like I get what you're saying, like it's telling you, again, like, and it is like, it's kind of like your mom telling you, like, you're gonna fall, you're gonna fall, you're gonna fall, and then you fall, like, but it was for that reason, because the first time I couldn't get through the book through the technician phase, and I think it was because I was identifying that I was in the technician phase, and then when I went back and I read the rest of the book, it was easier for me to identify now that what stage I'm at and what stage I want to be at. So this time it made me want to read it more.
Yes. So to me, that's also an important point that I also tell my members, my clients. From time to time, go back and reread a book that you may have read a year ago or 2 years ago, when you were somewhere different on your entrepreneurial journey. Because as Michelle just explained, and it's very accurate and very useful, your perspective will change. You will change. And there's certain books that I literally have taken to reading every year. I read this, there's not that many, but there's a few books that I will read them every year because they're just that good. And it helps me to relearn and rehear and reread these certain things.
Okay. Awesome, and that's pretty much everything that I have, like for me, like as my notes, like from the book. Was was happy that we read it, because I had never finished it, but I really discovered what stage I was at. Like it was very apparent, like what stage I had just left and what stage I'm at and where I need to be, like in my future. And I guess I came to a time in my life where that future matters, and like it became very apparent. So I was grateful. Like I'm glad that I did read that book, and I'm glad we did go with like the email.
Good.
It's gonna provide to my growth for sure. Did anybody, Becky, did you read the book?
Not to put you on the spot.
Hi. Yes, I did. Not at the chapter that you guys are on. I'm a little bit late. I'm like on chapter 5. But I think for me, like questioning on how when it's time to transition from each stage. And if like there's like an anxiety level, because I kind of picked that up, like when it's talking about the technician and then the manager, like is there like a certain anxiety that you feel like letting go of your baby, like you're training people to do this, I get that, but it's like your baby, so how do you find that trust and not getting that anxiety from that stage?
So Michelle, do you want to answer? Or do you want me to answer
Go
that
ahead,
first? You want me to
let's
go first? Okay, so great question, great question. And actually, I think I heard two questions in there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the first one is, when do you know that it's time? And look, you'll know when it's painful. We don't always have to wait to the point where there's a breakdown. Like my business isn't working, there's chaos, stuff is failing. But the reality is, a lot of times it does get to that point. Now, how do you avoid getting to that? Again, when you start, probably the best way is time. When you are so frazzled, right? There's stuff that I know I need to be working on, and I don't have time to work on it. And this is stuff that'll help my business, and I've been meaning to get to it for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and I haven't had the time to do it. That's a really good indicator that it's time to take a different approach. So I don't know if that fully answered your question. Then the second part that
Yes.
sorry,
Yes, it did.
the second part that I heard is, how do you overcome that anxiety of letting your baby go? Um, it's never going to go away fully, probably. But again, what you can do is, if you, well, two things. Number one, the way you do the system is, you write down and document everything that you do. If you're making soap, first you start with this, and then you add this, and then literally everything. Think of it like a recipe, or I love the analogy that he uses. He uses a script, like for actors or a play. Write down everything that a person doing your function as a technician needs to do. And then once you have that all written down and organized, that should give you a little bit of comfort. Now I have a template, a playbook, instructions, script, whatever you want to call it, that when I hire somebody, I can have and say, let's go through this together, read it, we're going to talk about it, I'm going to train you, I'm going to stand next to you, whatever. So it's the system. That'll give you some comfort. It's not going to go away completely. The second part is, I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule, the 80%, 20%. It's called the Pareto Rule if you want to look it up. But this 80-20 rule is amazing because you see it in nature, you see it in human behavior. It's a fantastic thing. Again, the Pareto Rule, the 80-20 rule. And what that really tells you for business in this context is that it's okay to find someone who can do it, at least to start, 80% as well. If you can find someone and train them that's going to do 80% as good a job as you, the master technician, that's good enough. That doesn't mean you stay there. That just means you start them, you get them to that 80%, and with time, you're always doing continuous improvement, innovation, training. And so they're going to eventually, with experience, get to 85, 90, very, very close. Going back to the McDonald's example, McDonald's has an amazing system, but we all know that when they hire a new person, people mess up. They get an order wrong, or it takes them forever to take your order, or so there's still some variability there. The end goal is the goal. So understand, you're not going to find somebody to step in on day one, no matter how good your system, your SOP that you write is going to be. You're going to have to accept an 80%, and most of the time that 80% is good enough, because think of what the trade-off. Now you're freeing up your time that you can use more valuable activities, like working on the business, not in the business.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have two experiences with that. The first one was with my spa. When I first started the spa, I used to do the treatments, and I was what you would say, like, it was a technician, but I was doing like the massages or like the services on the clients. And I was like, I cannot, like, there's not going to come somebody that's going to do the treatments like as good as I make them. So I started weaning myself off, but because I one point that the book makes is, and I've hit this point twice already, so I'm going to bring it up. Like, it says that you have to transition from one to the other when you hit chaos, like when you're about to crash and burn. Like, that's when you, like, either step up and you do what your business needs for you to survive, or like you're gonna shut down. And for me, like, it hit with the spa, when I needed to get out of the room, but I didn't want to, because like a lot of the clients liked the way that I did the treatments, and then I ended up getting hurt, so I had no choice but to actually draw up like a training manual and give it to girls so that they could know how to do the treatments, so that they could do the treatments. But even though it wasn't as good as I was able to concentrate on like sending out the text reminders, on like booking the calendar, on, you know, getting retail going and trying out retail like at the office, because I've tried that as well. And so I had to find different ways, like for me to be able to make money for the business that wasn't
Mhm.
like the hard task or the task that kept up so much of my time that it was like preventing me from doing other things. The second time when this hit with my other business with the natural products was when the pandemic happened. When the pandemic happened, prior to that, I was making all the products. I would get people to come and help me. Like, I get kind of like a check. Like, I would have people come and help me, like, put the products in bottles or, you know, in containers, or they would come and help me wash the dishes and clean the kitchen
Mhm.
so that I could maximize the most out of my time making the products. But when the pandemic hit, I really had to focus on like the marketing and actually running the business, that
Mhm.
I had to let go of that. So I had to also once again start with that, like, okay, this is how you make a scrub. This is how you fix the scrub. And then obviously, like, I'm here to oversee you, kind of like how he said in McDonald's. Like, at first, you have to be there to oversee them until, like, 80/20, right? Like, until they're getting like higher and they can do things on their own. And so twice I have done this, and one thing that I think that you got to focus on is leaving the tasks that you don't like to do, like cleaning. Like, outsourcing cleaning is like a really great start, because it's not an employee that's going to cost you a lot, but maybe like somebody that can go once a week. It doesn't have to be somebody highly skilled. Like, you can, you know, train them easily, like how you want everything clean. Like, and so it's letting like the tasks that you don't want to do go first, and the or the tasks that are taking up like too much of your time, that they're not allowing you to grow. And once again, in both instances, I was at the point where either I was going to make a change or I was going to shut down my business, and I
Mhm.
had to make the change, and that's really how I done. But
And
the book
that
was very
to
right.
me.
Like, you hit that.
Yeah, I understand that because you have to be forced to either grow or just say you can't do it anymore. So that's crazy that two of those things like forced you to to move up and see your business different. Thank you. You
And
definitely
it
answered my
wasn't because
question.
I learned, and it wasn't because I listened. Like, it was because I literally hit a crash and burn. Like, either I'm gonna shut down. Like, and so I understand it, and when I see it, like, I try to tell people too, but it's because I know that I learned the hard way, and unfortunately, many of us do, but not many of us survive.
Hmm.
And I think we have Gabby back in. Gabby, are you in?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, guys.
Do you have any business questions for Ernesto?
I had a question that I think you guys casually answered at the beginning before you started discussing the book and the technician part. And I think you said it took you about a year to a year and a half to transition from the technician to the managerial role. Is that what I heard correctly?
Yes, that's what I was saying. Like, it took me until the point where my business was gonna crash and burn. Like,
Okay.
it was either I was gonna move up or I was gonna let the business down, because I wasn't gonna be able to do everything. And I did get to a point where I think one of the times when I called Ernesto, when it was the time to like crash and burn, um, I think it was around the time that Gabby and I had just started doing business, or it was shortly after, but I couldn't sleep. I looked physically tired. I looked older. I wasn't eating right. And I just had like so much tension from like trying to do everything, that I was literally just staying in my office and going to sleep and waking up and working until I went back to sleep. Like, no breaks for talking, no breaks for like friends, no breaks for anything. And it really did get me to that point where I was sick, and I really wish that I had like learned to let go of that technician position prior to damaging my business to that point where it was gonna crash and burn. But it does take, and some business survive like on the technician for like a while, but it's not like a method like for you to grow. So it's like one of those things like let's say you're learning how to swim, and like you don't want to go deeper and you don't want to go deeper, and like I think I was like that. Like I was like, no, let me just get my feet wet, and then it was like, girl, like either you're gonna get to the other side, or like this side's like there's lava coming, like it's you're gonna have to swim. And that's what pushed me like to the other side. And now I feel that my growth has just like my life is better. I can sleep more now. I can rest better. My business is functioning better. I can focus on like the important things like the marketing. And now I'm actually looking forward to going to like the entrepreneurship position, which is where you have a little bit more time to do the things that you love, to love life. And that's what Michael Gerber says. Like he calls it like to love life, to love
Right.
life.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just asking. Well, go ahead and say what you were gonna say, and maybe you'll answer my question.
So one thing that Michelle's, and again, I've been with Michelle for part of her journey. I've seen it, I can vouch for it, and I don't disagree with anything she said. But to her last point about what Gerber said about to enjoy your life, but you skipped one important part, I think, where he says, you must think of your business as a product, which means at what point is it finished, right? That doesn't mean you ever stop working, quote unquote, on your business, but at what point does your business, whether it was what you looked at 5 years ago or 5 years forward, saying, okay, my business now looks the way I want it to look, where I can relax. I can go hang out at the beach. I can go be with my family. I can go whatever I want because my business, quote unquote, is finished as a product. I've finished developing my business. That doesn't mean I'm never going to stop growing it if I don't want to, but think of your business because that's the end point at which you can then relax, really. So go ahead with your question.
Okay, so that does answer part of the question. I guess for me right now, my struggles are the fact that I almost feel as though I got pushed into this business unexpectedly. It's something that took off really fast for me, and it took off in a direction that I really wasn't planning for it to. So I originally wanted to focus on being a Reiki practitioner and just doing energy work, and that was it. But then in working with Michelle and starting to do like the full moon bashes and other events, like my tarot readings took off more. And so I was sought out a little bit more for that. And I'm still working full time. And I see my clients after work, 6 to 10. So I guess my thing right now is like, I have 3 kids. I don't have time. I'm doing everything. I am in the technician phase, but because the services that I provide, I don't really see how I can outsource that or teach that unless either you have the gift or you practice it. You know what I mean? I'm really not product based right now. It's just services. I'm trying to get into the products, into finding stuff to sell, like in addition to the services I offer. But right now, like the sole base of my business is services.
So I'll be honest, the services are easier to get into and start, service-based businesses, but service-based businesses are tougher to scale for that exact reason. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy. They're easier to start than products most of the time, but to scale can be very tough. It's not impossible. In fact, I don't know if you were on with us earlier. I mentioned that one of my other favorite books and authors is The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And as fantastic as that book is, he does say up front, he goes, the principle that I teach is far more applicable to a product-based business. That doesn't mean it can apply to services, but it's just tougher. So understand that what you're facing is normal, that it's a tough challenge for services. There are ways you can do it. For instance, you could hire, again, outsource these other parts of it, the marketing, the scheduling, right? And there's another way you can look at it. For instance, you mentioned 2 different services that you're offering. You can go with one that you like more and maybe charge more for that one. Oh, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The one that you don't like as much, you actually charge more for that one because it's a win-win. I've had clients over the years, and even right now, that take that exact approach. I prefer doing this than this. So for my approach, if you want me to do this, you're gonna have to pay me more. And if I lose some of my clients, I mean, and that's part of the ugly, right? Nobody wants to talk about losing clients, but there's only so many hours in the day. I would rather lose some of my clients that are asking me to do the stuff that I don't really like as much. I'm not saying no. If you really want it, pay me a little bit more and I'll do it. But the ones that I really like and enjoy, I don't need to raise the price. So there's all kinds of pricing things you can do. And again, focusing on the marketing, really market to the ones that you like.
I think like Gabby, for your services, what would also be cool, like or like a direction, like would be like to offer a subscription base, like you get you pay so much a month and then you get like one reading. And so now you're still offering like the service or like a Reiki healing or a tarot reading. Like you get one like based on a subscription that you're paying. Like, and then you can offer like the services in that manner too. I think that when I switched with the spa, like to offering like the subscriptions, like the memberships, that job became easier because now they're kind of like tied down to you. So if you're getting help, like, and you're gonna be like, oh, okay, she's gonna help me on Tuesdays, and if you want if you have a premium subscription, like you can get readings from me, but they're gonna be from her. But there's many ways that you can go about offering like the services and still turning it into like something else. And as far as like the products, Ernesto was telling me for the longest time, he's like, I feel like you need to bring other products in. Like, I feel like you need to bring other brands in. And I'm like, no, like, this is only me. Like, I made this and this is different. And then it finally hit me. I was like, okay, like, I'm not producing fast enough. The stuff that's like handmade, like the soaps and all that. So I started to bring in like other items that fill in the store because people are still buying that. And like sometimes like even when I'm not selling it, like I'm turning it into a basket or a gift or something like that, because I feel like when you have more at the store, people buy more. Like when you have less, like they spend less. It's very weird, but it is true. Like if they just buy more when you have more stuff to offer.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's some good tips there, I think, hopefully.
Yes, very good. Thank you.
But they're both, I mean, and like you said, like you're in an infancy stage, like you're transitioning right now. And so these are all things that like you're gonna experience and that you're gonna face and that like you're gonna have to navigate through and find like your way and see what where you're gonna end up. Because I think even like where we are now, it's never like where you predicted. Like I guess if I could say like the full moon bash too, like for me it was an event like to bring in people. It was like a hippie event, like to bring in people to buy products. That was like my ultimate goal. And then now it has, as you know, like taken a life of its own with that event. And so sometimes like we don't really have I don't want to say like control, but where the market goes, like ultimately like you're trying to make money to support your family.
Yeah, actually, Michelle gave me a good segue. She can vouch. I'm a big believer. There's a thing out there called customer discovery. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah, you have to do that.
And that's where it tells you what the market wants. And I'm very brutal and blunt. I tell my clients, my members, I'm here to give you tough love. I'm not here to blow sunshine. And so what I do is I say, go out and do the customer discovery. It's a type of taking surveys, and then Michelle can teach anybody how to do it because I've taught her. But the bottom line is, yes, we have to go where the market is. It doesn't matter what you think, what Michelle thinks, what I think. It only matters what the market, your market thinks. That's the only thing that counts. So you got to figure out, you got to know what that is, and you got to give it to them. To the best of your ability. That's what you got to figure out. What does your market want, and then do your best to give it to them.
Right. Yeah, that's what I discovered with the tarot readings. That was not, I was trying to give them Reiki, and they're like, no, we want tarot, and that's not, where I saw myself going. But it definitely did open the doors for a lot of those clients to come back later for the Reiki. So I'm learning, and it's good insight and information that I will use.
And I honestly think like you're doing amazing. Like you're moving at such a fast pace. Like people are taking a liking to you. Like you're making waves. People are booking your services. Like people are asking for the things that you're offering. So I think that you have like amazing potential like to grow. Plus you're driven, and a lot of times like even if you have like everybody has wonderful ideas, everybody, right? It's like I call them like booty holes. Like everybody has one, and it's the same thing with concepts and ideas of like how to start a business. But very few people are driven and actually go forward. And I have seen like Gabby move forward like with her business and like work on it and everything. But by the same token, like she said, like it's going in a different direction and it's moving fast, like really fast.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. There's more great ideas than can be executed. So the key is the execution. It's great ideas are a dime a dozen. Honestly, it's the execution. It's the execution. I could tell you stories that would make your eyes water of amazing ideas, amazing products right here based in El Paso. That because the entrepreneur couldn't get it out of his or her own way, went to nothing. Amazing. I'm talking about ideas that Walmart wanted, Coca-Cola wanted. I'm not exaggerating. And they couldn't because they lacked the execution.
Well, not just execution. I think the biggest problem I have always had has been fear, because of the fact that I am a single mom and I need to make sure that my kids are taken care of first. And so my biggest thing has always been fear. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because like just the other day I was looking for like my kid's insurance card, and I pulled out one of my manifestation journals from 2013. And back then I literally had the idea of doing like a fast food delivery service called Nom Noms. And it was like a little furry monster with a little convertible car. And then 2 years later, it's like Uber hit, like Uber Eats hit. And I was like, wow, like my whole thing was like, I was scared. Like, what if I have like no drivers, and then like I have 10 people ordering that they want their food delivered, and I never followed through with it. I just kind of left it in my journal and never opened it again to that page. You know what I mean? So seeing that literally like just this week kind of gave me that fire and that motivation to like, okay, I really need to execute this business and these plans that I'm having for this business, or I'm going to stay stuck and like behind like I did then, and like I have with a lot of other things. So I think just getting past that fear also is like a bigger challenge for me than the actual execution.
Yeah, she's great in execution, but I can sense that. And just remember, like eventually we can drive ourselves to the point of crashing and burning, because I've done it. And it's harder to get out of that hole.
Yeah.
For me, it's been at least at that point. And I'm not saying impossible, like, because ultimately, like we still have the drive. And one thing that helps you as a mom is that you have to make it work.
Right.
And that's like, it is scary. I can't say that I've been winning all this time, but I can tell you that I've been able to maintain a business for what year are we on?
21.
It's gonna be 13 years in business now, in November. So,
by the way, there are single dads out there that also have to worry about taking care of their kids. Actually, in my case, it's just one now, but yes, so hats off to all the single parents, entrepreneurs out there.
Yes.
And it isn't easy to be like, okay, well, what if I fail? Like, what if, you know, what if I don't make it? What if all this, like, there's always the what ifs, like, there's always the what ifs, right? But I would rather fail and then you can find another job.
That's true.
Than not try it.
Sure, right.
I was like, well, I can go for somebody. Like, if I fail, I can go back and start like as a paralegal, and I'll be fine. I mean, I won't be fine, but I'll survive. And I just threw myself at it, and I was like, I can always going back to the law office, and the law office kept their doors open for me for a long time as well. But I was able to survive, and sometimes it is surviving like in a business world, because you have a lot of like ups and downs, especially right now. You're starting a business. Like, I thought I was crazy for starting a business in the recession of 2008, because that's when I started my business, when they announced like that we were gonna hit like a recession. But I think this pandemic has certainly been harder than that recession that we hit back in 2008. So you're not going through like, it's normal to have these feelings, because this is unprecedented, but there is still people spending money, and there is still people obviously wanting and having the desire of like your services.
Absolutely, yeah. Lots of good lessons there. Lots of good insight.
Yes. Thank you. I needed to hear that. If it fails, I can always go find a job again or something. So I think, I know what my next moves are. And
no, because I'm
excited.
I feel like I need to text Gabby. I didn't text anybody else to join us, but I really wanted you like to join and get like some feedback from like Ernesto as well, because Ernesto, like I said, he has like helped me a lot, and a lot of the times like it was looking outside my bubble, and the business coaches have like such a great impact for doing that. Like, they're looking at your problems from outside the bubble, so it's like way easier for them to give you solutions and for us to find the solutions while we're like inside.
Right. We're too close to see it, and they can see it from like all outside angles and perspectives. So
right.
I appreciate it.
Do you have any other questions, Gabby?
No, I mean, not right now. I'm waiting for my book still to come in. I've been able to catch parts and pieces through like the audio version, and so I'm still trying to get through the different chapters, but like I'm excited to sit down and absorb it.
Oh, the audiobook, Ernesto told me this, I didn't know that, but I was confused with the audiobook when I was trying to catch up on reading the book through the audiobook. The audiobook has the chapters mixed up.
They don't match. So I've read the book twice over the years, the physical book or the Kindle book. And this time I listened to the audiobook to get ready for this. And yeah, they'll be talking, they'll say chapter 8, and then they're actually covering chapter 16 in the physical book or whatever. So the chat, just be careful, the chapters don't match. I mean, it's still great, but the chapters don't match for whatever reason.
And that's on the audio. So even though you have been listening like to catch up, like the book is a little bit different. And I think that those chapters are gonna help you out a lot. Like the first ones where we did the review, like where they actually tell you what oh my gosh, where am I now? The chapters like where it explains to you like the different phases of like the technician, and like 1 through 5 are the most like where I was like, oh man, like those, like I don't know, like they really hit. They really made me think, and I felt like I was like, okay, like I see my faults, and I see where I've been the only one like that's been slowing down my growth, which is hard to say.
Right.
Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. I can't believe I just said
the
that.
public.
I can't believe I said that out loud. But it's very true, and it's a really good moment. Like it felt really good because I was like, okay, well now at least I have a direction like to go in, which is what Ernesto had been telling me the whole time. So it was funny. um, Gabby, if you are looking for like a consultation, and also for you, Becky, if you girls are looking for like a consult, like in regards to like business coaching or like going further into your business, like you can reach out to Ernesto. Ernesto, I'm gonna send you like I'll send you the people like your information like through
Sure.
email, so everybody will get like his information. But reach out to him, like take advantage of like a consultation and talking to him. Like he's very knowledgeable, and he gives you good direction if you're willing to listen.
If you're willing to.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. This is the first Entrepreneur Book Club discussion, and I'm very grateful that this idea that I had thought about for 2 years finally came to life. This is an idea kind of like how Gabby had, where I had written it down. And I wasn't sure how it was going to come to play, but I knew that I wanted to start a book club that was beneficial like to the community and also for myself. So this is definitely where I'm at. I feel like I'm in the right path, and I'm looking forward to the next discussion. Thank you, Ernesto, for being here.
Great, you're
for
welcome.
being our guest, for like teaching us and enlightening us with your knowledge. Like I appreciate you a lot as like a business coach. And he also coaches two of my friends, and they are really happy with like his coaching style too. And one of them is actually, she listens a little bit more than I
Just
do,
a
and
tad.
she's doing amazing. So congratulations, like to the people that have been working with Ernesto and actually putting like into play like the things that you tell them. So maybe I might get there now too. So.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you all for having me. It was a pleasure.
Have a good night. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Becky.
Good night. And
Bye.
God bless
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night.
Bye.